Well, good Sunday to you guys. Listen, October is typically a month of big changes, and this month is really going to be no different. Huge temperature swings on the way. Some snow for some of you. It could accumulate in some areas, and I think we're setting the stage for an early start to winter. All right, I think some early winter storms are on the way. We're going to detail that in this video, so stick around. We're going to get into it. Let's talk about over the next 32 days. This is the European extended weeklies. You can take this and just go, well, who knows, right? But the idea, though, will be that we will likely start to build that snowpack across Canada. That's going to be important for the next slide that I'm going to show you, because as the snow builds, as cold air starts to move out of the Arctic, especially as it moves south across the Canadian Northwest Territories, also the Canadian prairies, if there's snow on the ground, that cold air doesn't modify as fast, so that means that cold air sinks further to the south. A quick look at the next 7 days. Again, there is some snow in the forecast here over the lower 48. We're going to talk about that, and we do have a shot of some really chilly air moving into the Midwest, the Northeast, and even into the South. Notice these green blobs, if you will. That's temperature departures more than 10 degrees below average. There's even some blues here showing up. That's close to 20 degrees below average. So a big chill down on the way. And then look, behind that, actually, we swing back up. So I told you, October is a month of swings, and this month is really shaping up to be no different. I want to start with a bit of a different view here too, because this is looking down on the North Pole. This is where we are right now. We've got this chunk of cold air moving here. We've also got an Aleutian low here. Up around the Arctic, people ask me a lot, what's going on with the polar vortex? Well, right now it's really busted up. You've got all these chunks of cold air that have broken off from it. They've moved down into the mid-latitudes, and not a lot of cold air. Well, I mean, it's cold, but it will get much colder, I think, over the next couple of weeks around the North Pole as this polar vortex starts to strengthen. Boom, about right there. So once you see that, typically across the continental U.S., a strong polar vortex means above normal temperatures. You would think the opposite, right? But that's actually not what happens. So as this semi-permanent feature of cold air starts to spin here around the North Pole, a couple of things start to happen. Number one, it does get colder here. But two, one thing that I'm looking at is I'm backing things up right here. You've got some snow on the ground across Siberia. You've got this chunk of cold air, and look what it tries to do. As our polar vortex strengthens, it rotates kind of around that. So now we've got a chunk of cold air breaking off and moving south into the U.S. It looks like sometime toward the end of the month. So I think we end October cold, and this could mean some early snow, I think maybe even long term as we look down the road into November and December. Overall this winter, I still think we're above average in many areas. We will see those shots of cold air and snow. So if you like to follow those things, I hope you'll subscribe. Let's talk about what's going on right now in the short term. We do have some rain moving through the Great Lakes in the Northeast as we move through Sunday and into Monday. Some snow will start to mix in some areas, especially here into the Adirondacks. And I wouldn't be shocked if we get some snow mixing in here, maybe along the PA-New York border, and then back here across parts of the arrowhead of Minnesota and parts of Wisconsin, really the northern part of Wisconsin. Down towards Green Bay, I think we're too warm for snow. Madison, too warm, but cold enough, especially as this cold air aloft moves overhead. That's when we could get the most instability, and if we're going to squeeze a few snow showers out, it would be here. Cold enough that the snow showers continue now heading into Tuesday, and some of that snow could even be pushed as far south as the southern Appalachians, all the way down into the mountains of West Virginia, Southwest Virginia, North Carolina, maybe even parts of East Tennessee, but the highest elevations here, likely above 3,000 feet. And then that really cold air picks up from the northwest as we head into Wednesday. So maybe a chance of snow once you get away from the lakes here, get up into some elevation here, and there could be some snow, not just into the Adirondacks, maybe even as far south as the Catskills. The Green and White Mountains in the Northeast will see some snow out of this too. Zooming in a little bit closer into this region, not just Tuesday and Wednesday, but even as early as Sunday night into Monday here into parts of Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, into northern parts of New York. But the cold air really starts to build in as this low here moves north and east. It's going to try to almost move due north, and it might actually backtrack just a little bit around that upper low. But here comes the cold air rushing in. So big changes on the way, not just for the mountains, but even all the way down to the coast with numbers dropping below normal. And there's your snow starting to pick up here. Again, from the southern Appalachians all the way north. Now down into the southern Appalachians, here's a closer look at this. Again, the concern here in my mind would be right in this area, and I've talked about this in multiple videos, and we've been talking about this as early as a week ago. Monday night and Tuesday into Wednesday here, A lot of folks are still without power. Certainly that's going to cause some concerns here. If we get some accumulating snow again, it will be in the highest elevations. Likely, though, I think, especially up into the central mountains of West Virginia, get up towards Snowshoe, there could be several inches, I think, especially above 4,000 feet. And then here's a quick look into the northeast, too. You can see the most snow would fall here into the Adirondacks, into the Green and White Mountains, the highest elevations here into really a lot of Vermont. It may actually extend down into the northwest mountains here into parts of Massachusetts, and then up here into Maine and the parts of southern Canada. Right along the border, I think that's the best chance for snow. And then north of the river here, several inches possible, or centimeters as we measure it up here in Canada. Across the west, some big changes here, and this will eventually move east too. We're going to take a look at that. Big storm moving into the northwest. That's going to bring some heavy snow, I think, here into the mountain ranges of British Columbia, eventually into the Canadian Rockies along the border of Alberta and British Columbia. And a lot of this will start to move south, too, as the cold air pushes into Washington State, inland, too, into Idaho. We'll see those snow levels drop. They could be as low as 4,000 feet here. And I think we get our first decent accumulating snow here into the Cascades and potentially into the Wasatch, too. Here comes the real cold air, though. It looks like it holds off until Friday. The models have kind of flip-flop on this as to how far south this is going to go. Is it a Sierra snow? I don't know at this point. I don't know how far south it's going to go, but it's starting to look a little more likely for the mountains of Idaho, Wyoming, and down into the Wasatch here in Utah. And does it dig into Arizona? Does this storm dig all the way down into New Mexico? Well, the latest GFS says yes. Yesterday's run said not quite so much. Here's the overnight run of the GFS, bringing that low here into the southwest. So that would mean some snow here for the mountains of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, even Colorado, southwest Colorado. So very unsettled weather across the west. And here's a quick look at the potential snow numbers. Again, high elevations, Cascades, Intermountain West over the next 7 days or so. Temperatures will be on the way down. We're going to look at this first, and then we're going to talk about the overall forecast for the country as we head into the week. We'll get a bigger map here, but I want to show this cold air. How cold are we talking about? Well, certainly not earth-shattering, but chilly as we head into Monday across the Northeast. We're cooling down now, our front dropping to the south. Look at the numbers all the way down to Atlanta in the 40s now, waking up on Tuesday morning. Temperatures across the Northeast below freezing, and here in the parts of Minnesota down into the 20s easily, I think. We continue to push that cool air. I mean, it's modified by the time it gets into the south, right? It's went across a lot of land. And look at the warm air streamers here coming off the lakes. Clearly some influence from the warm water. But we're pushing that cool and dry air all the way down into the peninsula of Florida. And as we get into Wednesday morning, could be the coldest morning, I think, for the Northeast, or one of the colder mornings. Temperatures dropping into the low 20s in some areas up here. So a good hard freeze, some snow coming down, and some snowpack, and then into the mountains here in the upper 20s and low 30s. Some of the higher elevations, of course, colder. But we've got 40s all the way down to the coast of South Carolina, even down to Louisiana and parts of East Texas down to the 40s. Texarkana, mid-40s are going to feel pretty nice. All right. Look at the west. We do have big changes out here, too, on the way. We're going to speed this up a little bit. That really cold air starts to hold off until about Tuesday or Wednesday, and then it's pushing east here through the mountains first, and eventually it will push into the plains, and temperatures will start to drop back. There's some disagreement as to what happens after that, but here's that bigger view I promised. There comes your upper low through the Great Lakes. Into parts of Florida, we're drying out, which is certainly good. Maybe a few showers, though, as we move into Wednesday and Thursday. There's our system moving into the west. High pressure building in, though. Once we get rid of this storm here in the east, or this area of low pressure, we'll start to dry out some. Now, I want to watch this here along the coast. The last couple of model runs have tried to do something here. Now, what is this? Is it extra tropical? Is it tropical? I don't know. It's kind of a weird looking low off the East Coast. You've got an upper level trough here too, so some cold air aloft. So I don't know that it's necessarily tropical. Just something to watch though. And then I think you've got to watch the Gulf of Mexico as we head toward the end of this week into the first of next week. Some development possible here. The GFS has hinted at that for the last couple of model runs. And we're starting to see some things change, too, in the outlook from the National Hurricane Center. They have now pushed up this area for the potential for some tropical storm development, about a 30% chance of seeing some development in the next 7 days here. So what happens? That would likely be in this area by the time we get into the following week. So I think you have to watch the Gulf of Mexico. And overall, though, I mean, I know we're looking at the GFS way out. It's not really something you can count on, but look how active it gets, right? You've got multiple troughs swinging through the northern U.S. This is typical, right? You get your lows here, your fronts driving south, and your cold air pushing in. Again, I think we end the month cold overall, and we definitely have to keep an eye on what's going on across the tropics. All right, if you like this, I hope you'll subscribe, come back. Have a great Sunday. I'll see you next time.